Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we're going through all 4 divisional round matchups. Everybody, I hope you all enjoyed the wild card round. Had a lot of super wild card matchups going on, some surprises, some underdogs winning, and also some same old stuff going on. Unfortunately, your Ohio State Buckeyes lost in the national championship on Monday. Me and the entire city of Columbus are incredibly distressed still, but we move forward. We keep going on with the day job, and that is getting you as informed as possible about these 4 divisional round matchups. So have an old friend of the podcast here to help me do so. You've heard him every other week all season long, Mr. Andrew Erickson. Andrew, happy divisional round, my friend.
Dude, I am ready to get divisional, breaking all these games down. We got some great matchups, and hopefully this weekend can match our super wildcard weekend. I mean, yes. It was super, so they have a lot to live up to.
We are recording this at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, so obviously plenty of injury news will be coming in later in the week. Also have time to change our opinions, but again, want to go through all 4 of these matchups. Andrew and I have prepared about 28 questions worth of stuff, hoping to get you in and out in about 60 minutes, and we will see how much of that results in some goodness. So without further ado, let's get after it. First matchup, we got the Los Angeles Rams at the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay opening up as 7-point favorites, down to 6.5 now. Game total sinking from 47 to 45.5. So Andrew, I think the first question with this game is about, can Jared Goff really, do more than he did last week? Because, hey, he didn't get the start, but he deserves credit for coming in off the bench again to win. But come on now, we've seen this throughout the whole season. There's a very good and there's a very bad version of Jared Goff. Which version do you think we get this week?
I think we're going to get the bad version of Jared Goff. I don't want to beat around the bush here, but look, I'm not even sure Sean McVay wanted to play Jared Goff at all. And if John Wolford hadn't gotten hurt in that game, we wouldn't have seen Jared Goff. If John Wolford is healthy for this game, we don't even know if he could potentially start. So I just think that McVay is at a point where he doesn't really want to have Goff as the quarterback. And you look at the numbers, since week 12, Jared Goff, PFF passing grade, 59.0, which is the worst among remaining quarterbacks in the postseason. He's completed 2 passes over 20 yards since week 12 and compiled 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions from a clean pocket. So it's not like, he's getting a lot of pressure. His receivers are dropping the ball. He's just not playing really well. And look, this Green Bay defense has been a lot better. They're a lot better in the secondary. They have PFF's second highest graded coverage unit, 80.4, only behind the Los Angeles Rams. And honestly, just looking at this game as a whole, I just don't see a lot of offensive points being scored in general. And our friends over in the desert agree this has the lowest projected total on the year. So I don't like it. The Packers have given up 1 300-yard performance this season against Deshaun Watson. And yeah, I'm really out on Goff. And honestly, I would rather I think the Rams honestly have a better shot of winning if John Wolford starts. Because if you look at the line last week, we didn't know who the quarterback was going to be, and it didn't move at all. So even when we found out Wolford was going to start, it didn't move. So just goes to show you how much value Goff really has right now for this team.
Yeah, Wolford and his ability to move certainly does give that offense a different dimension. Goff, he is someone that plays so bad at times. I think he almost gets a worse reputation than he should have. But you know what? When you look at how this guy does do under pressure, it is kind of warranted. This year, 45.9 QB rating with a 4-7 touchdown to INT ratio under pressure, just 4.3 yards per attempt. But when he's kept clean, it's been fine. 105.6 QB rating, 16 touchdowns, 6 picks, 8.2 yards per attempt. That difference, though, only Drew Lock had a higher difference in terms of his yards per attempt, one kept clean versus under pressure. Now, the Packers are only 27th in pressure rate. This has kind of been the main difference between the 2019 and 2020 units. We haven't seen Zadarius Smith and these guys truly take over games the same way they did last year. But keep that in mind, because if Jared Goff is out there and they can hold off that pass rush, okay, then maybe he has a chance to have some success against Jair Alexander and company. If not, though, again, that's when we see Jared Goff sinking so low that we're talking about a $100 million man competing with John Wolford for the spot. So I think they should go with Goff. They have all the money devoted to him. And I think, again, if they can't keep him steady in the pocket, things will be okay. But it really is wild that this is a realistic conversation that, we can actually put some reasoning behind Wolford arguably getting the job. But Andrew, either way, no matter who's going to be under center, a lot of this offense is going to be feeding the ball to Cam Akers. He's been the focal point of this Rams offense all throughout the recent weeks. And I want to take a step back from this game for a second and just look at these rookie running backs in the 2021 landscape. I've asked this question a few times throughout the years, and we've kind of evolved along the way. But as it stands right now, we got Cam Akers, James Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson. Out of all these stud rookie running backs we've seen this year, who do you think rises to the top and should have the highest ADP entering 2021?
So for me, I think it should be Jonathan Taylor. I think that he has the most upside. We've seen him, his college profile was great coming in, and he finally started to hit. He had got some favorable matchups. The team started to feed him. He is in a good system. There's no reason to think that the Colts are going to bring in a different running back. It's going to probably be Hines and Jonathan Taylor again. Marlon Mack's a free agent. This is all kind of what we expected to happen, and that's exactly what happened. He broke out as a rookie, and he's going to be the main guy in his second year. So I think Jonathan Taylor is the clear number one guy. But then for me, I have Akers at 2 because, look, I get that there's this thing going on in the Twitter sphere about Cam Akers versus Darrell Henderson, and I'm not really sure where it came out of. I get, look, if you look at the numbers, they're pretty similar. Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. Yeah, if you just look at, points per carry basis, PFF rushing grade, all these metrics, explosive runs, yeah, they're all the same. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if Darrell Henderson is as good as Cam Akers because the team clearly thinks Cam Akers is the best running back. So that's where we're going to lean to the guy that's actually going to get the touches. And if anything, if you like Darrell Henderson, then this is a good opportunity to buy him in a dynasty league. Oh, he's the backup. Okay, well, running backs get hurt. Cam Akers got hurt this year. So you can at least know that, hey, if anything does happen to Akers, you can go get Darrell Henderson and you can rely on him as a potential fill-in running back who can deliver when given opportunities. So for me, I think it's Jonathan Taylor and then Akers as the 1-2. And then maybe there's a little of a gap for me probably when I get to some of the other running backs.
I think the only other guy we could maybe put up in that category is Antonio Gibson. Maybe James Robinson if nothing changes, just because we're legit talking about one of the most fed running backs in the league, regardless of, how many years of experience he has. So I think those are kind of your big four: James Robinson, Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson. And, I think you bring up a lot of good points. And this really is finally the role that we wanted Akers to have and honestly thought he'd have before now in this year. I mean, going into 2020, Sean McVay had coached 52 games with the Rams, and his RB1 played at least 60% of their snaps in 48 of those 52 games. So the kind of the three-back committee we saw for portions of this year, that was rare. It was what McVay told us he was going to do in the offseason, but as we know with coach speak, it kind of comes and goes. So Akers, Jonathan Taylor, and again, James Robinson, Antonio Gibson, all these guys have featured roles, but Akers and James Robinson, if nothing changes, are looking like the two that legit might never leave the field because of how much their offense has been trusting them. So expect to continue to see Akers, just getting fed at least throughout this playoff run with Henderson, continuing to battle that ankle injury, and he's just earned the job, I think, just out of his own performance so far. So once again, priced way too cheap on DraftKings. Anyone, in your heads out there, just buy all that volume you're getting from him at a very affordable price right now. Any thoughts on that, Andrew?
I agree with Cam Akers. I think that he's the probably lock button play in the early afternoon. And look, I think there's an advantage to playing him early on because you can figure out what to do with your lineups later on. So if something happens to Akers, he gets hurt or whatever, he puts up a goose egg, because we saw a lot of goose eggs last week. If a Ronald Jones scenario happens and he gets hurt during warmups and nobody tells us, then you can have some time to try to catch up to the field. And one more thing as well, I think looking forward, Darrell Henderson, potentially he could be the fill as in the Malcolm Brown role. If he could be that change of pace, explosive running back using the passing game instead of Malcolm Brown, who's really more of a plodding running back at this point, that would be a really nice 1-2 punch for the Rams running backs.
100%. Now, sticking on the DFS side of things here, again, we mentioned Cam Akers, 5,700. He's facing one of the league's, just worst run defenses really over the past 2 years, if not more, and the Packers. So we know we're going with Cam Akers. Cooper Kupp's going to be trying to play through the pain with his knee injury. Does Kupp playing through the pain make you want to get on Robert Woods or even like Josh Reynolds or Van Jefferson anymore? Or are you pretty much content only looking at Cam Akers as far as the DFS side of things go? Personally, I know Woods, we're getting those rush attempts and everything is so close to the line of scrimmage. I mean, nobody had more targets behind the line of scrimmage than Robert Woods this year. So Jair Alexander hasn't shot out since week 7. I'm not worried about that matchup, even if he does, because of the nature of Woods' targets. But I don't know, man, because everything we just said about Jared Goff, I think maybe we should just be focusing on Cam Akers and nobody else. What do you think?
I agree. There are so many other receiver options in that 5K range. Just looking at, there's Buccaneers receivers, so you could get Chris Godwin instead of Robert Woods, or you could play Antonio Brown instead of Cooper Kupp. And something that kind of just blew my mind when I was looking at the end zone targets for the Rams. So the Rams have thrown the ball into the end zone the second fewest amount of times this season. Only worse than the New England Patriots. So that kind of tells you the status of the upside of this passing attack. And Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp each have 5 end zone targets this season. That's tied for the most on their team. Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin have 5 end zone targets in the last 4 weeks. So that just kind of tells you what kind of upside you're paying for with these particular receivers. And for me, I guess I would still probably just lean towards Cooper Kupp. Again, we see the ownership on players coming back from injuries super low. I played in a contest last week. Mike Evans, I think, was at like 2%. And it makes sense. Look, people are afraid to click the button on a guy that's coming in hurt. I didn't play Mike Evans and I was wrong because I was afraid to play him because he was coming in hurt. But clearly, it seems like if these players are playing in these playoff games, they're going to be full go. They're going to play through the pain, and that's going to get people off Cooper Kupp. And look, I know you mentioned the matchup with Jair Alexander again. They move Woods around so much that it doesn't necessarily matter. But if you are, kind of splitting hairs, Kupp is going to probably see less coverage from Alexander when it's all said and done in terms of just overall snaps. So when I'm kind of comparing the two receivers, I guess I'd still lean towards Cooper Kupp just because I think he gives me more leverage as a lower owned play, and realistically, their ceilings are probably pretty similar.
Yeah, and we know both these guys, they do have the chance for, those 12 to 15 targets, but we also just know Cam Akers could be eaten in this one on the ground. So I think generally, to your first point, yeah, much better, higher ceiling options in that 5K range than messing around with Woods in particular. All right, so moving on the other side of the ball. Now we got a good offense to talk about because Aaron Rodgers, we've only really seen him look human a few moments this year, but hey, now we got his toughest test yet in the league's single best defense in the Los Angeles Rams. Andrew, great offense or great defense wins out in this matchup? Which one you got?
Man, if this was the NFC Championship game, it'd be easy because it'd be just like defense wins championships. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to play here. But it is the divisional round. So, again, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to put up a dud like he did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in Week 6. But there are some, carryover things that are from that game that could potentially pose problems for Rodgers in this matchup. So, in that game, he was pressured on 44% of his dropbacks, finished with obviously really poor performance, 5.8 fantasy points. And that pressure could really be another problem here in this matchup. Look, the Rams entering this game lead the league in pressure rate 51% since Week 14. Aaron Donald's banged up. Don't care. The guy is going to cause pressure, and he's going to cause havoc up the middle for Aaron Rodgers and company. And look, let's not forget, David Bakhtiari is out. So they had Billy Turner come in and start in his place in Week 17, and he allowed 3 pressures and earned a PFF pass blocking grade of 43.4. For the folks at home keeping track, it's not good. You don't want anything below 65, really, and he's at 43. Not a good PFF grade. And the team also just recently signed Jared Veldheer off the Colts practice squad. So they are scrambling a little bit to try to find a tackle replacement for David Bakhtiari. And I think that could pose some threats for Aaron Rodgers because of the pass rush. And that's what we've seen. That he can crumble sometimes like most quarterbacks under pressure. And to be honest, he's been running extremely hot, extremely pure under pressure this season. He's the only quarterback this season with at least 135 dropbacks under pressure to not throw multiple interceptions. So he's got 8 touchdowns and 1 pick. And look, when he's played the Bears, who have one of the better defenses, they've had a lot of dropped interceptions. So maybe this is a spot where Aaron Rodgers doesn't get so lucky against a really talented Rams defense, especially against, Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald, like guys that can actually make plays as opposed to some of the easier matchups he's faced over the season. I just think that on this slate, speaking in DFS terms, there are other quarterbacks that I think offer a little bit more upside, just a better game environment overall. And look, this game is clearly the ugly duckling of the 4-game slate where it's at 45.5, projected total, where every other game is over 50. So to me, it doesn't really make sense to attack this game when it's hard enough to try to figure out all the great plays from the other 3 games that should be just higher scoring environments.
Yeah, look, we've only seen 2 quarterbacks throw for at least 250 yards and multiple scores against this Rams D all season. Josh Allen in Week 3, Jimmy Garoppolo in Week 6 in the game that was just filled with, one pop pass after another to Deebo Samuel. So giving Kyle Shanahan a little more credit than Jimmy G in that one. But look, when this whole playoff started, I went through every single team. I want to try to figure out who's the most complete, just looking at, different weaknesses and strengths for, specific parts of teams. And the only somewhat negative I could find for the Rams is that they're 24th in yards after after the catch allowed per reception. Now, I think part of this is because they've faced the league's second lowest average target depth. I mean, teams don't have much time. The Rams do a great job of not loading the box, keeping bodies back. So it kind of makes sense that underneath area is the only kind of spot to really pick up bunches of yards against this defense. We do see the Packers popping as the number 3 offense in yards after the catch per completion. So that's kind of been the difference this year. It's not just Rodgers having to do playground ball with Devontae Adams, LaFleur, all their play action game. They've done a great job of setting up some easy passes, and they're going to need all those they can get against this Rams defense. Because again, they are, the epitome of just kind of, I don't want to say bend not break because they don't bend much as it is, but like that is their style. They do not want to give up big plays, and they won't sell out against the run to try to do that. If you just look at this year, in the terms of defense percentage of runs faced with 8+ defenders in the box. At the top, we got the Seahawks, loading the box on 59% of their opponent's runs. The Jaguars, 56%. All the way down at the bottom is the Rams at only 21%. The Broncos were number 2 at 29%. So one of the most revolutionary things from this great Rams defense has been their commitment to stopping the pass, not the run, not getting that old school football guy mentality in there. They've done a great job focusing on the pass first and foremost. So hey man, we'll see, because I think in today's NFL we've all kind of thought that yes, great offense will beat great defense. When we have 2 juggernauts facing each other, but Packers, I'm not saying they won't meet their match on offense this year, and that Tampa Bay game is kind of the only time we saw that. If it is going to be another defense, I certainly could see it being the Rams. Moving on from Aaron Rodgers here, looking at this running game now. Again, the Rams, they are not a team that are going to load the box to actively stop the run. So it would make sense if one of these Packers running backs could actually be a vital part to this game. We like to say running backs don't matter, but anyone getting 15+ touches in the game matters for the purposes of this conversation. So Andrew, we got Aaron Jones, who's been the lead guy. It seemed like maybe A.J. Dillon was going to, get a couple touches. He sure played well in week 16. No, he played 5 total snaps last week. Jamal Williams is back. Do you see Aaron Jones being the feature guy in the spot, or are we still going to see some sort of annoying committee?
It should be all Aaron Jones in this matchup. I looked at what they did in the postseason last year just to get an idea of, did they lean on Aaron Jones a little bit more? Did they use Jamal Williams more in a 50-50 commit or a 60-40 kind of split, where that's what we've seen? That's kind of the norm with Aaron Jones. He usually doesn't top 18 touches, but in the first playoff game they played last year, he had 22 touches and played 84% snap share, which would be one of the higher rates in touches in terms of volume that he would have seen this season. And since he came back from the injury, he's been averaging north of 17 touches per game. So again, I think that we're going to see him at least in that 18 to 20 range. And he's going to get the chance to catch balls out of the backfield. Like you mentioned, yards after the catch. I have to imagine that a lot of that has to go to the running back position as well. And I know that I'm pretty sure Deebo Samuel wants to have like 100 yards after the catch in some of his matchups against the Rams, because basically he was catching everything behind the line of scrimmage. So I think that some of those numbers come from the matchups against Deebo Samuel. But again, because they're so good at covering that, they're letting receivers catch the ball, and then they have to make the tackle. So I think Aaron Jones has the upside as a pass catcher. I'm interested to know about the ownership on Aaron Jones, how heavily he'll be owned in DFS. You're looking at the matchup again. You mentioned, that's really important to note, because if they're not trying to stop the run, then Aaron Jones should at least be able to accumulate yardage. And if he can find a touchdown, look, this running back landscape isn't amazing for this slate. We have a couple low value guys that could totally dud out and do nothing, and then we have Kamara, who's the most expensive running back. So you have Aaron Jones here, but we know that Aaron Jones probably has a type of ceiling that can match an Alvin Kamara if he finds that scores a couple touchdowns here and there. And last week we did see Chris Carson. He was decent, 16 rushes for 77 yards. He didn't score, so that's ultimately what didn't he didn't deliver really for fantasy in that reason. But Jones has much more upside in the passing game, especially against, if this Rams defensive backs, if they are really as good as everyone thinks they are and as good as they've been all year, then Aaron Rodgers is going to have to throw the ball to someone, and, they're going to have to score at some point.
Yeah, speaking of those Rams defensive backs, matchup really of the entire slate here is going to be Jalen Ramsey versus Devontae Adams. The question is, can we really expect him to take him away? Because we've seen Ramsey shadow 4 times this year, DK Metcalf 3 times, Mike Evans once, fewer than 50 yards allowed in every single time and just 1 touchdown. That's specifically in his coverage, though. As we know, Andrew, a lot of times these shadow matchups, yes, the guy's traveling with them all over the field, but usually that ends up resulting, 50 to 70% of the snaps, not exactly 100%. How worried are you about this matchup for Ramsey? And is it enough to do the unthinkable and fade Devontae Adams in DFS?
So there's a lot of ways you can look at this. And, something that kind of popped in my head was, and this was actually listening back to the Devontae Adams podcast when he came on the Chris Collinsworth podcast. He was talking to Richard Sherman, and it was a particular matchup with Sherman, I think was still on the Seahawks, and Aaron Rodgers just didn't throw to Richard Sherman's side. He just totally ignored him. He just, Richard Sherman was doing the yawning thing, and I can't say that Aaron Rodgers would do that to a guy like Devontae Adams, where he would just, whatever, I'm just going to attack every other player. I'm not going to look at Jalen Ramsey's side. I don't imagine him doing that just because of the connection that they've had all year, but again, it's in the range of outcomes. And look, Devontae Adams has had a couple down games here and there, so I think that there's some merit to not necessarily jamming him into every DFS lineup you play. He's the most expensive wide receiver on the slate, and look, it'd be different if there were no other options that you could pay up for, but we have a Tyreek Hill that you can pay up for. We have a Travis Kelce you could pay up for at tight end and put, use in the flex position. So I don't think that, you're not, a fish if you decide not to play Devontae Adams. Like, no one's going to come at you because, you tried to avoid Devontae Adams. Look, it's not just Jalen Ramsey that's good in this secondary. Their whole defense is really good. There's a reason why they have the best defense in the league, because they're good against all receivers, not just number ones, and it's not just because of Jalen Ramsey. Troy Hill's been really good. Darius Williams on the other side has been really good. And it's not to say that Adams can't beat those guys. Yeah, he can, but, from an overall standpoint, is he going to score 3 touchdowns and 150 yards? That's probably not in his range of outcomes. It's more like, okay, he can maybe get 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. Maybe that's more or less his ceiling in this particular spot. And something I want to mention as well, the Rams, all the talk about Ramsey and this and that, they play a lot of zone coverage. Like, it's not like they're just like bump and run, like mano-y-mano. And it's funny because I think that on our shadow cornerback matrix that we have at pff.com, we actually it actually labeled Jalen Ramsey giving up the touchdown to DK Metcalf because he had lined up ahead of him on the snap. But if you watch that play, Ramsey's not really the one in coverage. It was really more of a broken play. So if people are pointing and point chasing DK Metcalf's stat line, be like, oh, well, Metcalf went off against the Rams last week, so I got to play Devontae Adams. I don't think that's a really a smart justification to play Devontae Adams in that particular case. Again, the zone coverage I think is important to note because Adams' target share versus zone and man is a lot different. Against man coverage is 36%, against zone coverage is 27%. 10 of his touchdowns have been against man coverage, only 4 against zone. And his PFF receiving grade is actually a lot worse against zone coverage, 79.2 versus 95.0. So again, I don't think that you have to play Devontae Adams, and if you fade him, you can adjust after those games lock because you can figure out, okay, I got buried. I need Tyreek Hill to do X, Y, and Z for me to catch up. And I think something that's actually really interesting is MVS has actually scored more touchdowns this season than Adams has against zone coverage. So again, playing MVS is look, you can't stomach it. You just got to click the button if you're going to take the risk, but we've seen weirder things in these small slates, and we know MVS, dude, he's going to get at least one deep target. It's just a matter of, will he catch it?
MV sheesh, as we like to call him industry. It's always an emotional roller coaster trying to roster that dude. But no, I think what you said about just not having to force Devontae Andrew this week holds true, because just looking at the DraftKings pricing in particular, Devontae's at 8,600, Tyreek's at 8K, Stefon Diggs at 7,300, even Michael Thomas is down there at 67, Mike Evans 64. Like, there's just not that big of a difference between these guys' projected point totals relative to that price disparity we're seeing. So, tournaments and all that, if you want to go Rodgers, Adams, Tunyon, I get it. But no, certainly not something we need to necessarily build our entire lineup around this week, because yes, I do think there's enough guys underneath them. But yeah, it's zone coverage, and it's also just the reality that Ramsey, look, some weeks he plays like strictly in the slot. They want him around the line of scrimmage to make plays. The guy's physical as all hell. Intriguingly, though, he hasn't really done it when he's shadowed this year. Again, he's only shadowed in 4 matchups. In those games, in the slot, he's only spent 3 snaps, 6, 1, and 0. I mean, that's significant. Mike Evans played 24 snaps inside when they met, and Ramsey was shadowing him on fewer than a quarter of those. So Adams has lined up in the slot in 26% of his snaps this year. We've seen only 2 wide receivers clear 100 yards against this defense. Deebo Samuel, 133 yards, and Cole Beasley getting 100. Watch Devontae Adams, because if we see the Packers really want to get him free, I think it's going to be from the friendly confines of the slot, and I think that is where you can have the most success against this defense, if anywhere. Now, last point we want to talk about on the Packers here. Robert Tunyon just put together a bonkers season, and Andrew, I know this guy came out of nowhere. I know we don't have a long history of the Packers having these great tight ends, but I mean, just based on what we saw in 2020, Robert Tunyon, he needs to be in top 10 tight end lists, and dare I say, top 5. Probably not top 5, but man, this has been wild this year. He's been having such a great year.
Yeah, man, when you catch a lot of touchdowns, you put up fantasy points at the tight end position. Look, the thing with Robert Tonyan is, yeah, is he going to be top 10? For sure. You can't, anyone attached to a player like Aaron Rodgers is going to be, drafted in high regard. But the thing with me is, especially with the tight end position and how volatile it is and how touchdowns are volatile every single year. Look, Aaron Rodgers had a career high in the regular season, 9.1% touchdown rate. His career average is 6.3%. Look, the regression is going to come. It came for Aaron Jones. It comes for almost every single player, and Robert Tonyan just seems like the victim of circumstance in this situation. In terms of expected fantasy points, no tight end scored more over expectation than Robert Tonyan did. And I just have to imagine, we thought that the Green Bay Packers would draft a receiver last year or bring in some receiver, but hey, Al Robinson could be a free agent if he lands in Green Bay. See you later, Robert Tonyan. Like that's not going to happen. So yeah, even if he scores 5 touchdowns next year, maybe he'd be a decent tight end one. But I think that you're rather off going later. I'd rather take a guy later like a Noah Fant, who I think actually has a full complete skill set, as opposed to a guy that's just super reliant on touchdowns.
No, that's fair. Noah Fant is a screaming third-year buy. I got you there. But just, guys, this season was so insane. He caught 52 of 59 targets. So that's 7 incompletions. And he had 11 touchdowns. 11 touchdowns, 7 incompletions. So targets began being tracked in 1992. I went back, found every single player has had at least 50 targets in a season. That's 3,639 players. Robert Tonyan is the first one out of that group to have more touchdowns than incompletions. Nobody else has had a ratio above 0. Robert Tonyan at +4 is absolutely shattering record books. Truly just amazing and a one-of-a-kind season if there ever has been one for Robert Tonyan in 2020. All right, we've broken down this game pretty much every angle I could think of. Andrew, what is your pick from the spread or game total?
I'm going with the under here because I just think that matchups against the Rams are just turning into absolute just like slogs. Just there's not a lot of offense. The Rams offense I don't like. The Rams defense is good. The Packers defense is playing better. So I don't think that the Packers are necessarily going to need to push the envelope to come away with a win.
I'm going to take the Packers 6.5. I don't trust the Rams' ability to keep up. I'm a little concerned with how diverse this run game can be if, they can do pretty much what the 49ers did to this defense last year and, hopefully get a bad game out of Rodgers. But you know what? It's been a special pissed off FU season from Aaron Rodgers that I did not see coming to start, but we've now gotten 17 weeks of evidence that he is playing the best ball of his career. I expect that to keep up at home. And yes, so go Packers 6.5. And to Andrew's point, definitely betting the under instead of the over in this one if it comes to that. Next matchup, we got the Ravens at the Buffalo Bills. Bills Mafia open as 3-point favorites, as down to 2.5. Game total up from 49 to 50. So last week, Ravens, got the wild card win over the Titans. Lamar, had that interception that looked like straight out of Duck Hunter. That was brutal, but you know what? He reminded everyone just how electric he can be as a rusher. Andrew, is Lamar already the best rushing QB that football has ever seen?
Yeah, I don't see how you go anywhere else here. Dude, that run was absolutely insane. It looked like he was going to get sacked. And it's like, oh no, here we go again. Lamar can't win a playoff game. He just did that ugly interception, which, man, that interception, dude, that was, when he threw that, I was looking at all my DFS lineups and I'm just like, have I just made a grave mistake? What was I thinking? Obviously, he delivered with his legs, but yeah, his dual threat ability is really like nothing we've ever seen. He makes teams have to completely change their identity on defense. If he's playing a team that plays man coverage, they can't play man coverage against him because of the fact that he can just absolutely destroy you with his legs. And when you have to play zone against him, that's when he's been better as a passer. I looked at these man zone splits, especially with the Titans last week, and the Titans were a team that liked to run a lot of man coverage, similar to, Mike Vrabel with the Patriots. They run a lot of man coverage with some of their corners, but they couldn't do that in this matchup because they're like, well, if we run man coverage, then Lamar Jackson is going to rush for 1,000 yards against us. So we can't do that. Yeah. Lamar Jackson is definitely nothing like we've ever seen before, back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. And look, I still think that he can improve as a passer. I don't think that the book is necessarily out on him as a passer. Look, he can still, but I think that's important that he's still an effective quarterback as a rusher and can still be efficient as a rusher, and he can become a better quarterback in the pocket as a passer. We've seen guys develop over time. Obviously, Josh Allen, perfect example. Someone's developed a little bit over time. And I think something that's actually interesting about Lamar Jackson in terms of his EPA per play, So his EPA per play is actually higher as him rushing than it is passing this year. So, I mean, that just kind of shows you how effective he is as a rusher and how, again, not that he's the worst passer in the league, but the fact that he does have some room to improve as a thrower.
Well, it's just frustrating with a lot of these conversations among all quarterbacks, not just Lamar Jackson, but we just kind of ignore their rushing upside a lot of times. You see in any broadcast, they compare two quarterbacks. It's their touchdown interception ratio, their yards per game, and there's never any inclusion of rushing. And, people mocked Cam Newton's passing touchdown interceptions all season long. And yeah, I'm not sitting here trying to defend Cam as a passer, but we can't just ignore the freaking double-digit times some of these guys have scored touchdowns. Same thing with Kyler Murray, same thing even with Josh Allen during the first 2 years of his career. So I think the short answer to this question of Lamar already being the best rushing QB football has seen, somehow, yes. And I say this with all due respect to Mike Vick and some of the Trailblazers, the fact that they had to get most of this done just on scrambles, not, it's kind of some of the more design runs that have infiltrated the league in recent years. I mean, they deserve more credit for that, but these numbers are just incomprehensible almost, man. Lamar took over in week 11 in 2018. He is 5th in total rushing yards, not among quarterbacks in the league since taking over, behind only Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, and Ezekiel Elliott. Only 2 quarterbacks in NFL history have more games with at least 100 rushing yards, more than 5 of those games. That's Lamar Jackson at 10, Mike Vick at 11. So literally give Lamar a couple more games and he's going to already own the all-time record for most 100-yard rushing performances by a QB. Absolute madness. And Andrew, this leads us into our next topic. You wrote an article last week on the impact that a rushing QB can have on an offense's RB in fantasy. We've talked about this throughout the year with Kyler Murray when he was dinged up and Kenyon Drake getting more goal line attempts, targets can change. Talk to me about the key takeaways from this article and how it specifically relates to Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins.
Basically, the way you want to look at things is with the mobile quarterback, a lot of people look at it as, okay, yards per attempt is going to go up. The running back efficiency is going to go up. And that's true. On the ground, you see super hyper-efficient running back play. J.K. Dobbins, led the NFL in yards per carry, 6 yards. Sony Michel, out of nowhere, 5.7 yards per attempt. He was tied to Cam Newton. There's no coincidence that Michel's yards per attempt skyrocketed without Tom Brady back there. It's not a coincidence. It really has to do with a mobile quarterback being there because we've seen, looking at EPA per play went up. Yards per attempt went up. All of those things increase for a running back on the ground, but in reality, the overall output of a running back's yardage doesn't actually increase. So yes, the efficiency is going up. That's awesome. But it's not necessarily making up for the lack of volume that the player is receiving. So in the case of J.K. Dobbins, he's averaging 6 yards a carry. Oh, this is great. But he only had 11 carries. So, you take a guy who gets 20 carries who's averaging 4 yards per attempt. Okay, well, that player just gets more yardage overall. So I know that we always try to look at efficiency and see, he can make it up with efficiency. But in the case of at least the last 2 seasons, we're not seeing that with these running backs attached to their mobile quarterback. So it's to just not kind of fall for the trap necessarily of looking at a really sexy yards per attempt or efficiency numbers and then just being like, look, we talk about it all the time with running backs. Volume is king. And when you play with a mobile quarterback, that volume isn't there necessarily on the ground, like we've seen with J.K. Dobbins this year when he's splitting carries with Lamar Jackson and with Gus Edwards, and we're also not seeing it through the air. The targets are always decreasing. There's negative correlation between quarterback rushing attempts, total attempts, whether it's scrambles, whether it's design runs. We're seeing a negative correlation with running back targets. And look, there are plenty of prime examples of it. Most clearly and notably is Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara. We saw Kamara's targets absolutely tank. And look, since week 13, since J.K. Dobbins kind of became the actual quote-unquote starter for the Ravens, he has 2 catches. And look, if you're playing standard leagues, I don't know if Tom Brady and Drew Brees are in your league, but if you're playing in standard leagues still, that doesn't hurt you. But in most leagues that are PPR focused, not having any type of receiving floor can be so detrimental to your team. Basically, for any running back not named Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry obviously makes up for it because he gets 30 carries a game. So that's the one way you can overcome a lack of pass catching work in a PPR world. But just looking at the top 12 running backs overall this year in terms of PPR scoring, David Montgomery was really the only one that I would say that was tied to a mobile quarterback. And that would be just Mitchell Trubisky, who wasn't even his quarterback for the entire season. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. And with J.K. Dobbins, that's why I have him lower than a lot of the other year 2 running backs because, yes, I think he can be a super efficient runner, but ultimately I don't know how he's going to be an RB1 unless he sees a Derrick Henry type of workload.
Yeah, I mean, an extra, 0.3 on the yards per carry is great, but not when it takes away, 5 rush attempts and pretty much any pass game works. So agree with all those points. And look, I mean, again, volume is king. If we have a running back getting 80, 90% of, the usage on offense, who cares if their quarterback is a rusher or passer? You're probably looking at 20 touches per game anyway. We'll take those anytime we can get them. But in situations like Dobbins, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, I mean, all these running backs that we kind of wait to get the usual snap percentage that we see in other rooms, you might as well bump that up a good 10, 15% in that 70, 80% range before we can feel too good about any of these guys, because truly these rushing quarterbacks, they get the rush attempts and they just don't throw quite as often to those backs. So make sure you check out Andrew's article on pff.com for more information on that. Staying on this Ravens offense just a little bit longer, we got Marquise Brown coming on strong after being left for dead pretty much with that goose egg in week 11 against the Titans. I've talked a lot in this podcast over the past few weeks about how I wish that, the Ravens would really give Lamar Jackson a true number one receiver. We've seen Josh Allen get Stefon Diggs, Baker got OBJ, Kyler got Hopkins, Lamar's kind of that one quarterback in that age range that's been left in the dust in terms of just a true elite number one receiver being added to the Ravens. Andrew, are we looking at his legit number one wide receiver, or are you still skeptical of what Marquise Brown can be moving forward?
I just don't know if he's an alpha wide receiver. We really haven't seen him be, the primary target. Mark Andrews obviously gets really involved in the passing game, and I don't know. Again, the offense is obviously predicated around the run game, and maybe they don't really need an alpha wide receiver, but I don't know. I would expect more from Marquise Brown. Again, obviously he's had a great second half surge, 16 fantasy points per game since week 12. He scored or posted at least 98 receiving yards in every single game since then. But I don't know. I don't see him. A lot of it's like he's wide open on certain plays. I don't see him going up and making a lot of great catches. We don't see him necessarily, breaking guys' ankles against really tough defense. I just don't think that he can beat a lot of these tougher defensive backs in tough matchups. Like if it was Marquise Brown against the Rams, does he stand a chance? I don't know. And I think that could really present a lot of problems for the Ravens long term. I mean, look, if Allen Robinson, ended up in Baltimore, I think that would be a huge upgrade for their entire offense. But yeah, and even in this matchup too, again, you have a tougher cornerback, potentially, match up against Tre'Davious White, and the Bills have, longer cornerbacks. So I think this matchup is actually a lot tougher than kind of initially, looking at it on paper. Bills have allowed the fourth fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and they faced by far the lowest rate of deep ball attempts this season. So a lot of deep receivers or, guys that have high ADOTs have struggled against the Bills this season. So Marquise Brown, I'm not sure I love him in this matchup.
Yeah, look, speed kills. Marquise Brown has that. We know he can be a legit field-stretching wide receiver in this league. I had an article. It's up on PFF.com. I went through every playoff team's most explosive playmaker. Came up with this new metric called playmaker rate, where I'm pretty much rewarding extra points for big plays, 20-yard receptions, touchdowns, and even forced missed tackles. I mean, Marquise Brown came in at 9th among 153 players with at least 50 touches. The guy can make big plays, and he hasn't gotten a ton of help. I mean, one of just 14 receivers with a catchable deep ball rate under 40% among 48 qualified players. I would just love to see him be an overqualified wide receiver 2 than, someone stuck trying to be a wide receiver 1 that might be better off elsewhere. So we've seen Duvernay flash a little bit. Maybe I think he can definitely provide more out of the slot than Willie Snead in terms of explosiveness. Miles Boykin, he's flashed a little bit, but yes, Allen Robinson, let's get him a true wide receiver 1. Let Marquise Brown be an overqualified field stretching wide receiver 2. I mean, they're different players. He has a long way to go before he's, T.Y. Hilton in that kind of sphere, but it reminds me of that because T.Y. Hilton, for all those years with Andrew Luck and the Colts, okay, he's a great wide receiver, who's putting up numbers, but man, if that guy could be your number 2 stretching the field and have a legit guy, a legit alpha, to put in your words, number 1 wide receiver, I think that makes any offense better, and it can even make your other wide receivers better, like Marquise Brown, if it means he's getting more man coverage, more better singular matchups. Yeah, it's going to be tough for him to win this one, particularly as long as Tre'Davious White and company have their full attention on him. Now moving over to the other sideline. So Josh Allen overcame a sneaky tough wild card matchup with flying colors. We were talking about his issues potentially against that zone heavy defense. Did not make mistakes, got the job done, plenty of big plays along the way. Now we get to Ravens secondary, though, that has really only been torched by Patrick Mahomes over the past 2 seasons. Andrew, will the Bills offense keep on keeping on?
Dude, of course Josh Allen is going to get it done. I don't know what else to say. What else can you say about this guy? The fact that he should be in the MVP conversation. And look, if it hadn't been for Aaron Rodgers just going out and throwing 48 touchdowns, Josh Allen would have probably had a legitimate shot at winning the MVP award. So I think that he'll have a really strong consideration for it next year because now he's in the, in the spotlight. And if the Bills come out, guns blazing, and can have a really good year in 2021. I think that he's definitely going to be in the conversation for sure, at least to start the year. But look, obviously you guys talked about the zone coverage against the Colts last week, and that gave some Josh Allen some fits last week. But that couldn't be farther from the truth this week because he's playing the Ravens, and they don't run zone coverage at all. They play all man coverage, and that is what Josh Allen has absolutely destroyed all season long. Allen has a PFF passing grade of 89.2, which ranks third. He has 19 passing touchdowns, second, 8.8 yards per attempt, third against man coverage this season. And look, over the basically since the team came off the bye week, Josh Allen is first in fantasy points per game, second in expected fantasy points per game. So basically he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing, with the rushing, with the passing. I think he's worth every penny at 7.4K, and I think that he can actually outscore Patrick Mahomes. He can outscore Lamar Jackson. So I really like him a lot in this matchup. I'm not really turned off by the Baltimore Ravens at all. Pairing him with Stefon Diggs seems like a no-brainer. Again, another guy you can get off of Devontae Adams. You can use Stefon Diggs at 7.3K against man coverage. Diggs leads the NFL in targets, catches, receiving yards. So the connection is going to be firing on all cylinders. His target share is at 36% when facing man coverage. And look, the other thing that Baltimore does a lot as well is blitzes. So they blitz more than any other team at 30%. And of course, to no one's surprise, Allen leads the NFL in touchdown passes against the blitz. So I think that this works out just so perfectly for him. These weren't even hard for me to find. I saw that, that the Ravens were really blitz heavy and they ran a lot of man coverage. And I just knew that this would be kind of like a match made in heaven for a one Mr. Josh Allen.
And that's what's so wild, man, because if you just look at the Ravens, like base defense, yards per attempt, even against, guys in the slot, out wide, like it's a top 10 defense almost any way you shake it. But Josh Allen has just been so good in some of these specific areas that it's almost like a worst case scenario matchup for this Ravens defense, which again is tough to say because they've been so good over the past 2 years. Only Mahomes, he did it twice, and Baker Mayfield have gone for 300 plus in multiple scores. I mean, Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, we're talking about probably the legit number one secondary in the league just in terms of overall cornerback powers. But yeah, man, I think all that man coverage and you're facing Diggs, Beasley, Smokey Brown, Gabriel Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, weapons all over the place, and the Bills are not afraid to use them. Only Kyler Murray had more dropbacks with at least 4 wide receivers on the field this year. And this could be the one flaw I did find with the Ravens, because this year facing 4 wide receiver sets, they were 21st in yards per attempt, 23rd in explosive pass play rate, 26th in passer rating when the offense has at least 4 wide receivers out there. So yeah, you play all that man coverage and it might be fine, versus 2 or 3 guys out there when you can account for everyone. All of a sudden you put 4 speedy dudes out there with a quarterback that knows how to use them. That has caused problems. So keep an eye on with no Zach Moss. Maybe we see more like Isaiah McKenzie than usual, trying to stress the edges of that defense. Think the Bills might just have what they need to make this a long afternoon for the Ravens defense. Andrew mentioned that there's not going to be any Zach Moss for the rest of the playoffs. That means Devin Singletary should be the feature back. He is popping in every single DFS model you want to look at just 4,500 on DraftKings. Andrew, is Devin Singletary a must-own player in DFS due to this development, or are we maybe looking at some chalk that we should be trying to get away from?
I think that as long as we don't hear it's complicated because Leonard Fournette would potentially be the other low price running back you could turn to, but we don't know the situation with Ronald Jones right now, and we don't know when we'll know the situation with Ronald Jones because that game is the last game being played. So right now, Devin Singletary, yes, I think that he is that salary saver. Look, you take the value at running back. He has been in this spot before already this season during weeks 3 and 4. Played 89% of the snaps, total 31 carries, 9 catches, 35 fantasy points, 40 expected fantasy points per game. So, I mean, if I'm telling you a guy, in his range of outcomes pretty easily can, get 20 fantasy points and he's 4.5K, you're going to play him. And I think that he can be involved in the passing game. Again, Josh Allen doesn't really necessarily throw it to his backs a lot, but Devin Singletary does have 9, he is the one that does catch passes on the occasion that Josh Allen does throw the ball. And if this is a high-scoring game, like it should be, Devin Singletary is going to have a chance to potentially score. There's one less mouth to feed, per se, in the, at the goal line. So whether it's Josh Allen or Devin Singletary, there's no more Zach Moss. So I don't anticipate necessarily being like TJ Yeldon getting involved in. And please, for the love of me, do not put Devontae Freeman in this game. Just like, guys, please do not let it happen. So I think actually if you want to just, the safest play would honestly be just to play Devin Singletary and Josh Allen together. That way you can capture all that touchdown upside, and whatever Devin Singletary gets you if Josh Allen ends up scoring all the touchdowns, whatever, you'll just take it. If he gets 10 points, 15 points, it's not gonna bury you.
Oh my gosh, man. In my just freaking sadness this morning, I missed the Bills signing Devontae Freeman. I was like, what are you talking about, Andrew? Oh my goodness, what a disaster. Yes, I do think it's going to be the Devin Singletary show, despite Devontae Freeman's corpse making its way to Buffalo. We had 3 games this year with Moss out of the lineup. Singletary played 89, 63% snaps. The last performance was in a 42-16 loss where we saw Yeldon pretty much dominate fourth quarter usage and mop-up time. So, yes, I think Singletary will be the guy. And there was this weird thing coming out of Buffalo all year, like Zach Moss, was someone that they should have definitely had to have on the field over Singletary. Moss might very well be better, but Singletary isn't some scrub. He was actually tied for 8th in missed tackles forced per rush among all backs with at least 100 carries. Yeah, he's not going to probably truck stick, your linebacker at the goal line, but truly is an elusive guy. He's a theoretical 3-down back. He can catch the ball. He's not, liability in any one facet of the game. Certainly the type of back that you can see flirting with that true 90% snap rate, which is rare and impossible to find at 4,500. So yeah, we could see a bust. We know Josh Allen doesn't like to give the ball to his running backs when he can help it. But again, just too much potential usage for such a cheap price. Andrew, main event, or, Josh Allen, I guess the main event of the Bills, but co-main event, Stefon Diggs. I mean, the dude is just balling, him in 2002, Marvin Harrison, only wide receivers with at least 6 catches in 15 games of regular season. He comes out in the wild card round, looks just as good as ever. So we know he's top 5, but who would you put ahead, if anybody, when ranking just wide receivers who've been the best since week 1, 2020?
So Adams would definitely be number 1 for me. And the second one, I kind of struggle with a little bit. I put Tyreek Hill as my number 2 guy. And I could see it go either way. I could see Diggs at number 2 as well. But ultimately, I just thought about Hill and just the fear that he strikes into opposing defenses and how the guy can literally be doing nothing the entire. I mean, he has kind of that Randy Moss effect to him where he's on the field and you have to, the team has to spend seemingly hours and hours and hours game planning around this guy, and then he could just go out and just totally blow up, and it doesn't even matter what you did all through practice all week. So I guess just Hill for that game factor. I put him at 2, but I think Diggs at 3 is appropriate for how well he's played this season.
Yeah, I can't even really, I 100% agreeing with you. It's Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill ahead. And look, my big reason is points win football games. And Devontae Adams had 18 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill had 15 just receiving. And look, Stefon Diggs, if we got a nitpick, he only had 8. So very happy that the AP All-Pro first team had these 3 wide receivers. I think they got it right. Special credit to A.J. Brown, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, some of the other top performers. But yes, Diggs, Adams, Tyreek Hill, top 3 wide receivers, since week 1. And when we're making these lists, going into 2021, that's where it's going to be real interesting because, Hopkins, Julio, some of these other guys that we're going to have out there, we're going to have an amazing receiver to outside the top 5 in 2021. Cannot wait for some of those Twitter arguments where people are just, dumbfounded how you could ever leave their guy out. But truly, we are in, a golden age of wide receiver talent. It's been a lot of fun to see, particularly with Diggs in Buffalo. He's obviously not the only guy that has been making plays in this offense, though. Cole Beasley, John Brown, Dawson Knox, Isaiah McKenzie. We've seen a lot of different complementary guys step up at different points for the Bills offense. Andrew, which under-the-radar Bills skill position player do you think could make a big difference this week?
So I think I'm going to go back to John Brown. And I say that because I remember coming on this podcast, I don't remember what week it was, burying Brandon Cooks after he put up a goose egg. And I blew up my face. And ever since that moment, I have stopped to think and really look at things a little bit more closely and not just bury a guy because, he put up 0 points. He sucks, especially now. Look, he's still super cheap, 4.7K. No one's going to play him because everybody played him last week and he did nothing. So that's classic recency bias. But look, he still ran 40 routes, same as Diggs, and he still saw a lot of high value targets. Again, he was second in terms of fantasy points scored under expectations. So again, that usually means bounce back. The opportunities were there for him. And look, him and Josh Allen just weren't on the same page in that game. And if I'm going to buy a quarterback, wide receiver connection, getting back on track, it's going to be with Josh Allen. Last week, all of his air yards were basically uncatchable, so there really wasn't a lot of quality targets. But again, he was still seeing targets down the field. And prior to the goose egg, he had at least 72 receiving yards in his last 3 games. And one thing I'll note as well, so about the blitz heaviness of the Baltimore Ravens, John Brown has 3 touchdowns this season, and they've all come off of blitzes.
Ooh, good stuff there. I am sticking on the outside right there with you. Looking at Gabriel Davis, even with John Brown back, Davis played 54% snaps last week. And again, without Moss on the field, I could see them going even more 4 wide receiver heavy than usual. So I mentioned, again, I got this playmaker rate article up on PFF.com. I was using a touch threshold of 50. If you lower that to 25, Gabriel Davis is number 2 among 243 qualified players. Not a typo, everybody. He has 35 catches this year. He has 7 scores and 10 catches of 20 plus yards. And that's with, I want to say off the top of my head, 3 nullified touchdowns that could have even boosted him up to number 1. So Gabriel Davis, when the ball goes to him, big plays are usually not far behind. Andrew, we've broken down pretty much each and every angle from this one. Who is your pick and why? Or give me a game total if you're feeling risky there.
I'm going to take the Bills. And I know that the Ravens are getting a lot of love as underdogs. And I just think, look, I'm just going to lean on the quarterback that's been better all year. And it's been Josh Allen. I know Lamar Jackson has turned it on over the past couple weeks. But, if I'm going to take one quarterback, if I want one quarterback in this game, it's Josh Allen because of this season. So.
Yep, I'm with you. Give me Bills 2.5. I think, Ravens will keep it tight, won't make it easy. But again, I just think if you could make the perfect offense to attack what this Ravens defense might not do great, it sure seems like it will be the Bills.
Well,
and
it
now
seems
that,
like
go ahead.
It seems like the Ravens would have to go into this game and do it completely opposite of what they've done all season. Like, that would be the ideal strategy, but it's hard to ask your players, all right, so we're just going to do nothing like we've done all year. We're going to just totally, reverse it. And in theory, yeah, that makes sense. But again, you can't just necessarily do that. It doesn't, work like that.
Yeah, as you can see on PFF.com from Seth Galina, him breaking down the national championship, that's what Ohio State decided to do, is just not change anything, even though you're facing the most explosive passing offense college football has ever seen. Sigh. All right, quick shout out to our sponsors. Our first-time depositors, that Monkey Knife Fight, that put at least $20 into their account while using promo code PFF will receive a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's a $40 value for just $20, and you'll get the opportunity to turn that $20 into even more money playing daily fantasy and prop games at one of the fastest-growing fantasy sports sites in the USA, Monkey Knife Fight. So go to Monkey Knife Fight, deposit your $20 with promo code PFF today to receive your free PFF Edge annual subscription. Halfway through, everybody, thank you as always for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. We are on to the Browns at the Chiefs. Kansas City open 9.5-point favorites up to 10 across most books. Game total from 55 up to 56. So, got to be careful calling defenses the kryptonite for anybody, because last week I said the Steelers might be the kryptonite matchup for Baker Mayfield. Did not happen. No Stefanski, no Bitonio, no OBJ, no problem for this Browns offense. Andrew, talk to me a little bit about Baker Mayfield, and then, do you think ultimately we see over under 30 points from the Browns offense this week?
Yeah, dude, Baker Mayfield has been absolutely balling out. PFF grade since week 9, 90.5. Patrick Mahomes, 88.5. So, it's clear which quarterback is the superior signal caller in this matchup. No, just got to give credit to Baker Mayfield. He's obviously played so well, especially after the Odell Beckham Jr. injury, and he's been an actual fantasy asset, like we thought he would be after his rookie season. Since week 13, he's averaged 21.7 fantasy points per game, which ranks top 10 at the position, and 28 expected fantasy points per game, which ranks 5th. So, from a DFS perspective, I think that Baker Mayfield has a lot of appeal because he is a cheaper option that actually lets you jam in a lot of the Chiefs, skill players and lets you pay up. So I will have some lineups built with Baker Mayfield because, look, it's a really high over-under, and if the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs are going to score a lot of points, then Baker Mayfield is going to have to score a lot of points. And in most cases, this hasn't worked in the past where you just play the team against the Chiefs and hope that they rack up yardage in garbage time. But Baker Mayfield has been actually efficient as a passer over the past couple weeks. So I do like Baker Mayfield this matchup. But in terms of 30 points from them, I'm going to probably take the under. Last week, they just ran so pure. Everything just so worked in their favor. The pass to Jarvis Landry, he just easily avoids all the tackles and takes it 40 yards in the house. Kareem Hunt had 2 carries basically from, I think, the 10-yard line. He was able to score on both of them just because, the Steelers just couldn't happen to wrap him up. And I've seen Kareem Hunt, run those exact plays against other teams and get stuffed. So everything worked out in favor for the Cleveland Browns last week. And it's hard for that repeat performance against the Chiefs, especially, dude, I can't bet against Andy Reid off the bye week.
Yeah, man, you didn't even mention, the first snap of the
Oh
freaking
yeah.
game turning into a Browns touchdown after we're flying over Big Ben's head. So, no, I agree with a lot of what you said there. And credit to Baker Mayfield. And I would just say, people, again, don't mistake OBJ being out as Baker Mayfield being better because he hasn't had OBJ. I think it's the same effect we saw with Deshaun Watson without DeAndre Hopkins and even Teddy Bridgewater without Christian McCaffrey for a lot of this year. Look, Baker with OBJ threw to his first read on 63% of his dropbacks in 2019 than the first 6 weeks of 2020. Without 70.3% of his dropbacks. Like Baker, we've seen it. When he's under pressure, things fall apart. But when he's kept clean, when he just goes to his first read and you can use that howitzer for an arm he's got, things usually work out pretty well. Without OBJ, in week 7 through the wild card round, only Aaron Rodgers has been better in PFF grade when targeting the first read. Truly, when Baker Mayfield knows where he wants to put the ball, things have been great. Now, without OBJ, yes, he's been more, willing to do that. But just imagine if we can get that same attitude with a talent like OBJ on the outside. So as our boss man, Chris Collinsworth, so eloquently put it with Rashard Higgins, like he's not fast. He's not a great route runner. Like Baker just put him the ball. Imagine if you can get someone like OBJ out there that can actually change the way defenses are covering you, actually get him intertwined with the offense. Like that's producing the best overall ceiling for everybody involved, Baker included. It's been great to see him, turn us around because it wasn't too long ago that we were just, grouping Baker as truly one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. He's shown us that is not the case. Just realize, just taking OBJ out of the equation has not been why he's been better. It's been a change that has helped come to fruition because of that. But just realize best version of this Browns offense still certainly includes Odell Beckham Jr. Andrew, moving on to this running back room because, talked about Kareem Hunt. We did not mention Nick Chubb. My goodness, man. I mean, earlier this year, I got not misquoted on this podcast, but I was kind of talking about Nick Chubb maybe being the best running back in the league. And of course, on Twitter, that goes out on Ian Hartitz absolutely thinks Nick Chubb's the best running back in the league. Now I'm actually starting to believe it, man. After what we've seen all year and just even what he's been able to do as a receiver, I think has gone underrated as well. Andrew, if every NFL roster was deconstructed, we had a league-wide fantasy draft, like what someone might do when they start like a Madden franchise, no contracts involved, how many RBs, if any, are you selecting ahead of Nick Chubb?
So there's probably like 4 running backs I would take in front of him. So Kamara, McCaffrey, Barkley, and Dalvin Cook.
Saquon coming off the injury?
Dude, he's a generational talent. You can't fade the generational talent. I mean, Barkley was the one that I was probably most on the fence about, just because, again, like you mentioned, he's coming off the injury. But look, someone that you would think would be on there would be Derrick Henry. You just be like, oh, well, automatically jamming Derrick Henry. But no, I mean, Nick Chubb, had it not been for his injury, I wouldn't say he would have rushed for 2,000 yards, but he would have been right up there with Derrick Henry. He was right up there with Derrick Henry last year and just lost out on the rushing title. And I think that Nick Chubb is going to be out for vengeance next year. And because he is so deserving of a rushing title just because of how good he is. And he just really ran bad, the last couple of years, obviously losing out Derrick Henry last year and then getting hurt this year. I mean, he still rushed for 1,000 yards despite, missing half the season, which, look, that's hard to do in a pass-happy league that is the NFL in 2020. So credit to Nick Chubb. And, I traded for Nick Chubb in the Dynasty League. I traded Derrick Henry to get Nick Chubb. And, yeah, it felt bad, throughout this season. Didn't feel great about it. But now looking back, heading into 2021, I am happier that I have Nick Chubb as opposed to Derrick Henry heading into next season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do not think Henry deserves to be ahead of Chubb, real life or fantasy. Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey probably deserves a little bit of word too if we're looking at some of the injured guys. But yes, Chubb, anyone's idea of top 5. And I think we all know this as a rusher, but just realize this is not, him benefiting from a great offensive line because the Browns do have that. But, looking at stats that more reflect the running back in particular, I mean, yards after contact per rush, he's tied for second among 97 RBs with at least 100 carries since 2018. Forced missed tackles per attempt, tied for second. PFF rushing grade, he's second. I mean, this guy has been so legit as a rusher, and we know that, but don't count him out as a receiver. Just because Kareem Hunt is better than Nick Chubb doesn't mean Chubb can't be a great receiver in his own right. Maybe not great, but at least good. Because look, since 2018, Nick Chubb, 6 drops on 91 targets. Since Kareem Hunt has joined the Browns, he has 6 drops on 93 targets. Like, okay, I'm not denying that Hunt's maybe made more out of those opportunities than Chubb, but this is not someone that, offenses should be afraid to throw the ball to. The Browns we saw last week, getting that big chunk play on the screen. Just get this dude in the open field. Has not shown, stone hands by any stretch of the imagination. More touches for Nick Chubb. And yeah, I like that call about a potential 2021 blast off based on, the lack of respect he's generally gotten in these sorts of arguments. All right, moving on to Jarvis Landry because, hey man, I've been someone hesitant to put Jarvis Landry in the upper echelon tier of wide receivers receivers over the years, and yet he just keeps on balling, and particularly deserves a ton of credit for doing it this year, as the number one pass game target during OBJ's absence. So, Andrew, now we're facing a KC secondary that, good, not great. Maybe, we can dive some more into slot receiver specific numbers, but do you see Landry putting together another big week against Tyrann Mathieu and company?
Everything points to him potentially having another big week. I mean, the targets are there for him. He's clearly Baker Mayfield's favorite target in the passing game. He has had no games fewer than 6 targets since week 12, obviously not counting the game where they were all out because of COVID. 19.2 fantasy points per game. So, I mean, again, this is the highest over-under game of the week. So you want to target pieces in this game. And we mentioned the Rams receivers, earlier on, in that 5K range. Jarvis Landry is like smack dab in the middle of all these Bucs receivers and all these Rams receivers. And ideally, he seems like a pretty prime option because he's playing in such a, high-scoring game. And he is the number one receiver. And look, again, he's probably too cheap based on his status as the number one. Like all those other receivers, you have Brown and Godwin, it's 1A, 1B, 1C with Mike Evans. Like it's really hard to figure out, which guy is the alpha wide receiver, where it's pretty clear in the Browns offense who it is. And again, I think Rashard Higgins has some potential appeal. He is very low priced and he sees a lot of air yards. So if the Browns are really airing it out, it could be a Rashard Higgins week. But ultimately, Landry is clearly the safest option because his targets are almost guaranteed. And look, he makes plays and he's been Baker's guy and he's been really productive.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Higgins and Donovan Peoples-Jones might actually have the slightly better matchups on the outside. But like I'm looking at it right now in Ultimate, it's not too big of a difference, in terms of KC being ranked top 5 versus slot versus top 12. It's not an ideal matchup, and I do think you're probably right. Just chase the volume with Landry. If you want to go with that Higgins one, maybe. But, I mean, Landry's the only one we can feel truly good about in this passing offense.
Yeah, agreed. I do like Austin Hooper a lot. The matchup is really, really good for him against the Chiefs. The Chiefs have been one of the worst teams against the tight end position. And it's weird because this particular slate on DFS, Austin Hooper is at 3.8K on DraftKings. I think that the double tight end thing, again, is something that is usually not something we recommend ever doing. But considering Travis Kelce could be one of those tight ends, and he really isn't a tight end in his statistical category, you can make the case where you just look at Travis Kelce, just pretend he's a wide receiver, throw him in your flex, and you play Austin Hooper to save salary at 3.8K because that guy has been seeing insane amount of targets, insane amount of volume from Baker Mayfield, and the matchup is definitely there, again, against the Chiefs, allowed the second most fantasy points to tight ends over the last 4 weeks of the season. So if you can't afford, I'd probably just rather play Hooper over Rashard Higgins because I know the targets are going to be there for an Austin Hooper, and he does have a lot of equity in the end zone.
I like that call. Only Stefon Diggs had more receiving yards than Travis Kelce in this entire season. Not just a tight end, people. Truly a number one wide receiver. Not his fault. He shares a roster with Tyreek Hill. Moving on to the Chiefs offense while we're talking about him. So Mahomes likely going to finish number 2 in the MVP race. But man, I think we all know he's still the single most scary QB to face, regardless of, we're talking about who's winning the award. So Chiefs offense, they've underwhelmed for stretches, particularly in the second half of the season. Do you see them flipping a switch with the playoffs finally here? Or is there actually reason to be concerned based on the Broncos and Falcons performance from the past month?
I'm not concerned, especially with Andy Reid off the bye week, dude. He's basically undefeated. He's had some time to rest, and we've had these players basically off. We haven't seen Mahomes since week 16 at this point, and I think it's kind of maybe people kind of forgetting about the Chiefs a little bit because of all these other teams have been playing, and we really haven't seen. And Mahomes kind of was lackluster to end the year, but I think they were always just looking ahead to, these games don't matter. We're going to the playoffs. We're going to win the Super Bowl. We're going to repeat as champions. So I think they're going to be locked and dialed in. And look, this Browns defense gave up 500 yards last week to Ben Roethlisberger. I know they were down a couple cornerbacks, but look, it doesn't really matter. Denzel Ward coming back maybe will help a little bit. But, against Tyreek Hill, against Travis Kelce, I don't know how they're going to stop him. And look, Andy Reid, after the bye week, with Patrick Mahomes at quarterbacks, he's 6-0, and the Chiefs have averaged 38 points per game in those 6 wins. So, yeah, I'm gonna preview my pick. I'm gonna take the Chiefs. So,
Had this guy in the podcast about a month ago, Patrick Daugherty from Roto World, and I loved his kind of take on this situation. He called the Chiefs pretty much like the Warriors in that KC has just wanted to get to the playoffs for months. It's kind of like what we saw, when Curry and KD and all those guys were completely crushing it, and there was just no reason to even get all fussed up about a regular season game. That's what it's turned into for Patrick Mahomes. The guy is already on top of the football world. I don't know how, but truly, the guy just hasn't had any issues recently. You have to go back to November 19th, 2016, when Iowa State beat Texas Tech 66-10 to find the last time that Mahomes started a game and lost by 2 scores. So yes, I think he's going to flip the switch and go back immediately to being the best quarterback on this planet. All due respect to Tom Brady for having the best career ever, but we have never seen someone play the game at a higher level than Mahomes has shown so far. Expect that to keep on keeping on with finally something for this offense to play for. So with that in mind, I mean, we got this Chiefs backfield mix of banged up and ineffective all season long. Le'Veon Bell had that knee injury in week 17. Seemed like maybe more of just rest than anything, but we also got Clyde Edwards-Helaire trying to come back, play through the pain, suffering with that high ankle sprain. Andrew, are the Chiefs even going to mess around with this backfield, or are they just going to let Mahomes air the ball out to his heart's desire?
I would assume they just let Mahomes air the ball out. Again, we don't see problems fixed overnight, and I really can't imagine that the Chiefs would go into their bye week, their extended rest period, and be like, all right, when the playoffs come around, we're going to establish the run. Like, that's what we're going to do. We're not going to give it to Mahomes. Like, come on. Like, this is what they do. They throw the ball because it works the best. They're the opposite of they're the Seattle South, as I like to call them. So they do exactly what they should be doing. And look, does Clyde Edwards-Helaire have some interest in terms of DFS? I do think so. But again, we're not sure of his status right now. I haven't heard any news about him. He's good to go. Like, he's fully healthy. He's still got the questionable tag, so we have to wait till we hear any more updates about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But again, the Chiefs are projected to score the most points this week, so he's only 5.5K, so could he just find the end zone 1 or 2 times? Yeah, easily. So I don't think Edwards-Helaire is someone you just stay away from, because he has a lot of touchdown equity potentially in a matchup where the Chiefs could score a lot of points.
Yeah, Clyde 4 games before injury had 15, 12, 21, and 15 touches. So, I get it. He's not exactly, wasn't the world beater we were hoping, the starting running back in the Chiefs offense to be, but still had some big games. But yeah, it's going to be a passing show, everybody. Only 5 games this year to Mahomes have under 40 pass attempts, and every single one of those, obviously consisted of KC holding double-digit leads for most of the games. And, the one that really stuck out was against the Bills, but that was because the Bills, when we talked about this earlier with the Rams, like the Bills are 4th in terms of just run plays versus 8+ defenders in the box. Like, they invite teams to run the ball because they know that is 2020. Now it's 2021. Teams should be wanting to pass because it's more effective, so they invite offense to run the ball. Browns, they're on that side of things, but they're still only 20th, not leaning too far one way or another. I think the Chiefs will be able to do pretty much whatever they want on offense and control the ball. You can check out my mismatch manifesto article on PFF.com on Wednesday, but looking at the combined passing EPA, I mean, the Chiefs are popping at plus 0.44. Nobody else is even at 0.3. So truly, this is the biggest mismatch of the entire week, this Chiefs passing game versus the Browns secondary. Not to even hate on the Browns secondary that much. They've been banged up and stuff, but it's just the Chiefs are that much better compared to most other secondaries. This is simply what happens. So looking at this Chiefs passing game, though, because we know Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, I mean, they're massive issues for any defense to try to figure out. Gun to your head, though, Andrew, who's a larger issue for the Browns defense specifically to deal with this week? And there's no wrong answer, but Kelce or Hill?
I'll go with Travis Kelce. I just think that they will actually have no answers for him. At least they have Denzel Ward back, who is fast, who could potentially, you can run with Tyreek Hill, we can play safety over the top, we have Ronnie Harrison. Like, there are some players there, but the Browns have been bad against tight ends all season, and they really haven't played any of the actual elite tight ends outside Mark Andrews. So they have not played a Darren Waller. It's Travis Kelce is the best tight end that they have faced all season, and honestly, he could put up 200 yards in this game. Like, he's eyeing the Darren Waller 200-yard game, and he's like, all right, I want to get myself a 200-yard chain. So Travis Kelce, Browns' 3rd most fantasy points allowed to the tight ends this season, and yeah, I have no idea how they're going to stop him.
Yeah, I asked a very similar question to Danny Kelly from The Ringer on this podcast last week, and he agreed with you with Kelce. I get it. I mean, the dude, again, 2nd receiving yards this year, 2nd since 2018, behind only Hopkins. Very tough to disagree. I do think Hill's impact, on this offense is just so rare. I mean, nobody has more deep ball targets since 2018, just considered wide open or purely open than Tyreek Hill. And even as a runner, man, I'd love to see them get this dude 3 to 5 carries in the playoffs now. Last game of the year, can't hold anything back, Brett, as Dan Fouts once said. I mean, only Robert Woods has been more efficient than Tyreek Hill as a rusher among wide receivers, or just anyone really over the past few years. 6.9 yards per carry from Tyreek Hill, with some of that being as a true RB. And I mean, you just look at the motion, man. The things that like defenses have to do pre-snap when Tyreek Hill just goes screaming across the formation. Only the 49ers and Ravens utilize more motion than the Chiefs in 2020. And that's really, taking us to our picks. That's what makes the Chiefs such a freaking pain in the ass to try to defend. Because you have Patrick Mahomes, who can make any throw on the field. You have Tyreek Hill, who can run by everyone. You have Travis Kelce, who can get open against anyone. And they have Andy Reid and his entire Chiefs coaching staff continuously putting them in great positions to succeed. So with that said, Andrew, what's your pick?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. Don't really care how big the spread is. I'm just going to take the Chiefs.
I had Browns plus 10 written down, but I've talked myself out of it on the podcast. Yeah, I agree with you. Can't put the spread high enough. We will see if Nick Chubb and company can just have so much overwhelming success on the ground that maybe they can keep things within 10 points. I get it. Chiefs are the 5th worst defense in yards before contact allowed per attempt, but man, You take one possession off against this Chiefs offense, you're going to be down in an awful hurry. So I will be taking the Chiefs with you against the spread. One more matchup. Quick shout out to sponsor before we get there, though. Subscribe to PFF's Elite annual subscription using promo code ACTION to receive a year of Elite subscription access and 1 year of Action Pro subscription access for just $199.99. Action Pro is Action Network's premium subscription, offering tailor-made tools to make avid and new bettors better. This is a limited time offer that is currently only made available now through the Super Bowl, and this offer also only applies to first-time Elite annual subscribers. So that's promo code ACTION to receive a year of Elite subscription access and 1 year of Action Pro subscription access for just $199.99. What a combo there. Last matchup, everybody. We got the Buccaneers at the Saints. Take 3. Saints sitting at they open as 3.5 point favorites, slightly down to 3. Game total up from 50.5 to 51.5. So look, TB12, Tom Brady, Andrew, he's your guy. You got his jersey in the background. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube, you can see it. He's looked more human against the Saints than any other defense this season. Will the third time be the charm for Brady in this Bucs offense?
I think the third time will be the charm for Tom Brady, Tampa Brady,
There we go.
So the thing with Brady and this offense is the last time they played the Saints, Antonio Brown just showed up. The offense was not clicking. They didn't have all of the pieces kind of working together, but that's kind of what's formed over the past couple weeks. Antonio Brown is now fully integrated into this offense. They have Mike Evans. They have Gronk. They're using Cameron Brate. Everyone is kind of being used, and I don't know if this is really the same offense anymore that the Bucs, played with when they played the Saints, back in week 1, of course, when it was all new. Brady had all new receivers basically for the first time. And then in week 9, when, okay, we have Antonio Brown, let's throw him the ball a bunch. Oh, wait, what are we doing? Wait, we're not sure. So I think that this Buccaneers offense is just so much more in line and organized now than it was in those past matchups. So again, I think that they'll have much more success against the Saints defense, especially because the Saints have a good pass rush, but the Tampa Bay can block. And there was a couple matchups earlier this year. I think Ali Marpet actually missed one of those games against the Saints, and that caused a lot of pressure for Tom Brady, and that's not going to be the case. Marpet is obviously healthy. Brady's had great protection during their hot streak recently. So I think that the Buccaneers offense is going to have much more success in this matchup.
It really is a great point. The Saints have caught the Buccaneers on the 2 weeks that you would most want to play this offense. Week 1 when they're trying to figure everything out, and then obviously in week 9 when you had Antonio Brown back in the full thing. So I think that's why when you look at some of Brady's numbers against the Saints, we see just some oddities popping out. In week 9 had a season high 22 pressure dropbacks. I mean, he has 4 turnover worthy plays against the Saints, only 6 against the entire rest of the league. So look, this guy Brady this year leads the NFL on completions, passing yards, on balls thrown at least 20 yards downfield. The noodle arm narrative is not there for Brady. His arm looks absolutely fine. It has looked fine all year. Just 2 for 9 on deep balls against the Saints. So how much of that is the Saints defense being great? I think a little bit, but more than anything, I do think, to your point, yes, we just haven't quite seen this version of the Buccaneers offense clicking facing the Saints defense. So not anyone's idea of a great matchup, but at a minimum, I do think we see the Saints, putting up a bit better effort than that, the Buccaneers putting up a bit better effort than that 3-point performance we saw against the Saints the last time around in week 9. So one big kind of individual matchup that's stolen the show a little bit in these Saints-Buccaneers matchups over the years has been Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore. It's been swinging pretty heavily in Lattimore's favor in recent spots. Marshawn Lattimore, someone that we have seen get roasted in shadow coverage from time to time. But you know what? If you're good enough to kind of earn that duty in the, during the week anyway, and be asked to track number 1 wide receiver, you deserve some credit just for being in that position to begin with. So, Andrew, Evans versus Lattimore, who do you give the edge to and why?
I guess I'll just give the edge back to Lattimore. I mean, he's had a lot of success against Mike Evans, and Brady doesn't need to necessarily force the narrative to get his ball to Mike Evans. Look, he has plenty of other options that he can go to. He can go to AB, go to Godwin, Fournette out of the backfield, Gronk, Cameron Brate, like I mentioned before, is getting more involved. So, and Brady's not one to, I need to get this ball to Mike Evans. Mike Evans has had plenty of catches this year, plenty of balls thrown his way. And it's not to say that, Mike Evans, you can't play him. Marshawn Lattimore is going to, absolutely neutralize him. Marshawn Lattimore, again, it seems like he shows up for these matchups too. Like, there are other matchups against much worse receivers that he just doesn't show up for and just doesn't play well. So, yeah, I still will. I mean, I think it's important to consider it, especially because, we're trying to figure out which Bucs receiver we want to play in our DFS lineups. And, look, Mike Evans has probably the worst, wide receiver cornerback matchup. It's just something that you use when you're trying to figure out and trying to, decide which guy you pick. You have to have some type of, information to kind of tip the scale in one way or another. And I guess this kind of tips the scale a little bit more to some of the other receivers for me.
It's a tiebreaker, and I think certainly lowers his ceiling. I will say we see similar kind of Devontae Adams, Jalen Ramsey conversation topics with this. I mean, Lattimore, he played 17 snaps in the slot versus the Chiefs this year, otherwise under 10 in every single game. So Evans has played 33% snaps in the slot. That's why you look back at their last game, and Lattimore technically hasn't given up a reception to Evans all year, I believe, in his coverage. But, when Evans catches 4 balls for 64 yards, I don't exactly want to reward Lattimore for not moving to the slot to track him there. So, you know what? Lowers his ceiling. Certainly wouldn't expect, a boom game from Evans. But man, keep going back to my Playmaker article. Check it out, everybody. It's a good time. Number 1 among 153 players in Playmaker rate with at least 50 touches this year was Mike Evans. 20 catches of 20 plus yards, 13 receiving touchdowns. He has been Brady's number 1 factor all year long, particularly in the red zone. As we saw last week, even when he is playing through the pain, can still be plenty effective. So be careful about fading as a whole, but I certainly do understand lowering expectations just a bit. Andrew, we've touched on this a little bit, but AB, Godwin, Gronk, Fournette, Rojo, a lot of other options if things can't go through Mike Evans. Which of these guys do you see having the biggest impact this week and why? We'll assume for the sake of this that Rojo and Fournette will both be active.
So for me, I think I want to lean towards Chris Godwin. Just looking at him, it's really versus him versus Antonio Brown is kind of what I'm looking at. And he's got the edge on Brown in target share and air yard share in the last 4 weeks. And the air yard share is actually pretty significant. Godwin is seeing a lot. I mean, look, all the Tampa Bay Buccaneers receivers are seeing downfield targets because, again, like you mentioned, Tom Brady is really leveraging the deep ball this year. But, over the past 4 weeks, it is Chris Godwin that is seeing a 27% air yard share. So I do like that. I like the verse upside. And look, dude, of course, on the broadcast, they're going to mention Tom Brady. And, Tom Brady said Chris Godwin has the best hands ever. And Chris Godwin has, the worst game of his career, dropping, 5 balls. And, look, I think that that's important for Brady to get that fixed with Chris Godwin because Chris Godwin has shown, a magnificent hands throughout his career. So, again, it's a fluke thing. The Deontay Johnson drops, the Jerry Jeudy drops. This isn't something that happens. You don't just drop 5 balls and then you're, all right, well, you got to throw him away. You can't throw him the ball anymore. He's going to drop 5 balls, the next week. I don't anticipate that happening. So I like Chris Godwin to really bounce back. He had 6 drops entering last week's game in his NFL career, and he had 5. So I like him in this matchup. And the PFF wide receiver quarterback chart has him with the highest advantage of all Bucs receivers. And it's funny because that chart, every single week, I give it a quick glance, and every single week it's like Bucs receiver, Bucs receiver, Bucs receiver. So this week it is Chris Godwin at the top. I think Antonio Brown's 3rd. So again, it is really hard to, they all could have really good games because we saw this, last week's slate. Steelers wide receivers. I mean, they all kind of worked out for you because they all did really well. So there's a scenario where they all can kind of hit, but for me, if I'm going to pick one, I'm going to go with Chris Godwin.
Might have stumbled on something special there with Deontay drops, and I haven't heard that one before.
Oh,
I might,
man.
if you see me send that tweet out, just know I did in fact steal it from you. I like that one. I think Godwin's a very good call. He has been getting the usage, but yeah, man, AB has been the difference maker of late. I was surprised to see his snaps down. They were more or less splitting reps between him and Cam Brate. Wanting to go more two tight end. If I had to guess, I would think that was more, try to deal with that Washington football team pass rush and all the kind of problems that they can present. So wouldn't necessarily expect to see AB down earn these 50% again because, man, last 4 games, 5 catches, 93 yards, touchdown, 4 catches, 35 yards and a score, 11 catches, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, most recently 2 catches, 49 yards and a score, team high 2.05 yards per route run this season, 3rd most targets without a drop at 65 among all players in the league behind only Larry Fitzgerald and Tim Patrick. So AB, we kind of wondered when they were a little bit slow out the gate if we were getting the same version of him, but man, if he can keep his head on straight, get back into 2021, still on the Buccaneers, and not doing anything too stupid off the field, we're going to have to, really look hard at these wide receiver rankings, man, because if we're getting legit, maybe not prime AB back, but anyone's idea of a great wide receiver, this 2021 offense is going to be even scarier than what we saw in 2020.
Well, we do have to address the matchup, the marquee matchup in this game, which is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Which Bucs receiver is he going to try to get disqualified? Is it going to be AB? Because AB has been really behaved, but I mean, I think Mike Evans has gotten ejected in one of these games before, hasn't he?
Him and Lattimore. Evans cheap shotted the hell out of Lattimore a couple of years ago, and just a brute. Man, like I put that cheap shot right up there with OBJ going after Josh Norman's head way back when. So that's a very good point. Michael Thomas, Javon Wims, and Anthony Miller are the 3 wide receivers that, with some certainty, we believe have punched Chauncey Gardner-Johnson this year. Great point, great storyline to keep an eye on. My money would be on AB snapping, but I do like your point about Evans potentially. Hey man, we talked about him going to the slot more often. Maybe that's the matchup that will trigger another punch flying towards Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's direction. Great point. All right, moving on to the Saints. So Drew Brees, wasn't spectacular against the Bears, but didn't make any mistakes. Win's a win. But noodle arm, we've seen noodling over under 30 points for the Saints offense this week, Andrew.
I'm going to go over. I mean, this Buccaneers defense, yes, they got a good pass rush, but I mean, Taylor Heineke looked like a freaking superstar out there against, what was supposed to be a good defense. Like Carlton Davis and Jamal Dean, started the season out as, top tier corners, and they've really just regressed poorly over the past couple weeks. And look, Drew Brees has his top 2 weapons now. He has Alvin Kamara. He has Michael Thomas. And all he's done really since returning from his injury has thrown for 3 touchdowns, and 2 touchdowns. And he had the one game where he didn't throw any because Alvin Kamara obviously scored 6 touchdowns. So we could be easily seeing, Drew Brees having, 10 passing touchdowns since coming back from his injury. And we wouldn't really be as complaining as much about his performance. Again, yeah, he's not going to be stretching the field. But look, that's why they have Taysom Hill. That's legit. Taysom Hill's role is he's going to come in and chuck the ball deep, which, again, if you're playing Drew Brees in fantasy, that obviously hurts because that limits his ceiling. But I think at this point, we kind of know Drew Brees has a limited ceiling. And if you are going to play quarterback in this game, I think it just probably makes more sense to, if you're going to kind of capture a potential shootout, it makes way more sense to potentially just grab it with Brady, who obviously has way more upside because he is the one that's actually throwing the ball deep than Drew Brees.
Yeah, I mean, in that second Buccaneers game where the Saints were kind of the first offense to really expose that defense, it wasn't Brees throwing deep. It wasn't even him overwhelmingly feeding Kamara and Michael Thomas. And this is maybe what makes this version of the Saints offense scarier than pass additions, because that was kind of the verdict on how to beat them. Condense the field. Don't let him throw the ball over your heads. He's probably not going to try much anyway, and just make life really tough on Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. But in that second Buccaneers game, Brees went 8 for 8 when not throwing to his first read. Season high 83.1 PFF grade on those passes. So look, even if Carlton Davis can have some success with Michael Thomas, even if, Devin White and company can contain Alvin Kamara, we got more problems than usual with Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook, Adam Trotman, weapons really more all over the place. Even Deontay Harris was getting more involved than we've seen throughout the year in that wild card win. So a lot more options to go around. I'm not saying the Saints, are overwhelmingly loaded with, ballers on offense, but certainly enough guys to make life difficult as they did in week 9 with those 38 points. So since since then, Rams, Chiefs, Falcons twice have all gone for at least 27. And to your point, yes, Washington looked pretty good as well. So certainly not, a juggernaut of a defense they're facing. And because of that, what are we making of Alvin Kamara, man? Because he hasn't gone nuts against the Buccaneers, but there's no Derrick Henry now. There's really no one to compete with Alvin Kamara's price tag on DFS. I haven't seen ridiculous target share, but come on, there's no way we can fade Kamara pretty much in cash and tournaments alike, right?
The thing is, we know that the target share is there. And look, Deontay Harris, man, 14 routes, 7 targets. That's not going to happen again. I can't imagine it's going to happen again. He had a 3.3 ADOT. So to me, it was clear that for some reason, Sean Payton just wanted to, hey, we're going to run the ball with Alvin Kamara, and we're going to use Deontay Harris in this, pass catching role near the line of scrimmage, which I get was fine. I mean, they were in control for that game for most of it, even though, the score was close. I mean, the Bears offense was just doing absolutely nothing. So, I mean, Kamara, though, they're feeding Kamara. Week 16, 22 carries, career high, gets COVID. Week 18, 23 carries, career high. And it's funny because Alvin Kamara came out and was like, yeah, having the week off was like another bye week to me. I was like, dude, didn't you just have COVID? Did it just not do anything to you? And I don't know. I mean, and that's the thing that's going to be tough to talk about, next season when we talk about some of these players that had COVID and did it affect them or not, because it's inconclusive. It seems like, Zeke had it and we saw his efficiency fall off, and then Cam was good, and then he had it, and then it's so hard to tell what it does to these guys. And I guess that's just the ultimate conclusion, is that it really is conclusive trying to figure out what it did to you, because Alvin Kamara came out stronger, it seems like, because now he can shoulder 23 carries in a game, which he's literally never done. He's literally never had 20 carries in a game until the past month, and he's done it twice. So they're feeding Alvin Kamara, which I love to see. So, I mean, I think they just did it in a weird way. They gave him his touches through carries as opposed to throwing it to him. So if his carries come down, I would assume that those would get replaced with receptions. And like I mentioned before, Deontay Harris, 7 targets on 14 routes run. That can't be a repeatable performance.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson's another guy post-COVID to just really ball the hell out. And it's no one wants to really talk about it in the media, because you're almost trying to say COVID's not a big deal. We all understand how important it is, and we're in a pandemic. We all understand COVID is a very real, very serious issue. But yeah, it's one of these things where, unless we're getting pregame reports about a player actively being limited, I don't know if we can really change projections based on someone coming back from COVID. We just don't have enough information about it, about the individual player, and then about, the past examples. I mean, before Lamar Jackson's first game back, Schefter came out with a tweet that was Lamar Jackson coming back from COVID, very serious. We'll see if he can play the whole game. And we're all freaking out. What the hell has Schefter heard? Is Lamar not going to play the whole game? Dude goes off and, has one of the best games of his freaking season. So yeah, very difficult. And at least in this situation, no, we do not need to worry about those longer term effects. And we've really just seen, Sean Payton willing to make Alvin Kamara his full on feature back in the playoffs, and 6 career playoff games, 64% snaps, 66, 69, 66, 75, and most recently 70% snaps, average of 17.5 touches per game. So, with all that said, I'd be down for Kamara at his usual price tag, but $7,900 on DraftKings, they dropped him $600 after that game last week when he had freaking 25 touches, whatever it was. So it's literally the cheapest he's been since that Taysom Hill ridiculousness was going off and he wasn't getting any targets. Lock button Alvin Kamara in DFS formats of all shapes and sizes this week, everybody. Last note on this matchup. So again, Bucs made Taylor Heineke and the Washington football team look very confident through the air. Will the divisional round be the Michael Thomas's first game this year with 100+ yards and a touchdown, Andrew? Yes or no?
I think it is. And the reason I say that is because I think the Buccaneers can actually make this game more competitive. It's something I stumbled upon. I wasn't even looking for it. A statistic that I found about Michael Thomas last year. He actually led the NFL. Again, obviously he led the NFL in targets, receptions, everything like that last year. But something that popped out to me was he led the NFL in targets when the Saints were trailing by 7 or more points. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, I wonder, have the Saints been playing with positive game scripts in the games that Michael Thomas has played? And if you think back, they've played the Buccaneers with Michael Thomas, and they've basically blown out the Buccaneers both those games. So that's part of the reason why I think his numbers have not been super great, because they've won all the games that he's played in with Drew Brees, and they really haven't had to force the narrative. And I think last week, again, they were in control of that game. So Drew Brees didn't need to force feed Michael Thomas because, we're competing with Mitchell Trubisky. We got to make sure we score more points. It was clear from the get-go, the beginning of the game, it was like slant to Michael Thomas, into Michael Thomas, like getting him involved, getting him a touchdown, kind of being, all right, Thomas, you got your touchdown. You're getting back involved with the offense. We don't need to target you like crazy because, our defense is getting the job done on the other side. But I think in this particular matchup, the Buccaneers are going to potentially, come out with a lead. The Buccaneers have been one of the highest scoring teams in the first half over the past couple weeks. I think they're actually number one in the league in terms of points scored in the first half. So we could see the Saints with a negative game script, which just means, okay, more targets for Kamara, more targets for Michael Thomas, and that means good things for our fantasy lineups.
Yeah, credit to Carlton Davis for doing a really good job on Michael Thomas this year in 2 games. He's caught 8 passes for, 68 yards on just 11 targets. No scores on Davis and the Buccaneers, but it's that target number. 11 targets, people. That's usually what we're seeing from Thomas in one game. Now with the season on the line and everything, would not be shocking at all to see him easily surpass double-digit targets, particularly to your point, if things are a little bit more competitive. Look, Michael Thomas has had his quarterback get hurt again. He's done it with Teddy, now Taysom, now Breeze. Look, give Michael Thomas a freaking strong arm quarterback for once before we start just ripping this guy apart, calling him slant boy, this or that. The guy gets open continuously in one of the more crowded underneath areas of the field you can find in the NFL. So, I know we all like to say, oh, Michael Thomas doesn't go deep. He only runs slants. Maybe pay a little more attention to quarterbacks throwing the ball and realize that probably is all Michael Thomas can run. And the fact he ends up getting as open as he does time after time again just shows you how talented he is. So we were talking about, top 5 2021 wide receivers. It's going to be awkward not putting Michael Thomas on that list going 2021. Just realize he's still anybody's idea of a top 10 option at the position. Andrew, we've reached the final verdict. What's your pick here? Saints Buccaneers, game total, spread. Who you got?
I'm going to go with the over because this is the only game that's being played in a dome. So I'm gonna buy into the dome narrative and that perfect pristine air conditions for perfect flight travel for footballs to fly through the air. So I'm gonna take the over there, despite the fact that we have 2 quarterbacks with the average age of 42 playing.
I will be actually taking Saints -3. I'm fine laying those points. We have a bunch of evidence that this defense can give Brady problems. And as great as he has looked towards this, final stretch run, a lot of that has come against some bad defenses. So look, Breeze and company, they're humming. They've been humming really against the Buccaneers throughout this year as well. And again, we know the Saints defense is certainly also playing at a higher level than the Buccaneers defense. So to me, it all adds up to the Saints capturing this one. Not expecting to blow up by any stretch of the imagination, but just 3 points. I think that they earned that, and at least, should be at another 1.5 higher at the current line. Andrew, that's going to do it, man. We have gone through 4 games in record time, hour and 30 minutes. I don't mind spending a little more time on these pods since we're only giving you, giving all you listeners out there 2 per week for the postseason. But Andrew, let the people know what you got on the docket this week on PFF.com, where they can find you on Twitter.
So I'm writing about Allen Robinson. I've name dropped him a couple times during this podcast, but just kind of talking about his free agency prospects, where he could potentially land, and basically how underrated he still is, and how the fact that he probably has top 5 wide receiver talent, and he has been subjected to the worst quarterback play probably imaginable since he probably started playing any type of organized football in his life. So again, just a fun stat about him. He has seen 64% of his targets have been deemed catchable since he entered the league in 2014, which ranks 91st out of 101 qualifying wide receivers. So hashtag free Allen Robinson, and make sure you check out the article on PFF.com and follow me on Twitter at Andrew Erickson _.
Going to be a sheesh from me for A-Rob. His QBs dating back to college: Matt McGloin, Christian Hackenberg, Blake Bortles, Chad Henne, Chase Daniel, Mitch Trubisky. Get Allen Robinson to Green Bay. Who says no? Andrew and I certainly do not. Thank you all for listening to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, we're going 2 episodes per week in the playoffs. We'll get back to, 5 to even 7 in February when I got a bunch of team exit interviews on the way. So for Andrew, I'm Ian. This has been the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And until next time, take care, everybody.